Hello and welcome to Beyond the Politics, a regular examination of the events happening right here in the Quinte region and the people who work so hard behind the scenes to make it all happen. I'm your host, Paul Martin. Joining me, as always, my co-host, columnist for the Belleville Intelligencer, Colin Mackay.
Thanks, Paul.
And our special guest today, former Belleville Mayor, and as we learned today, procedurally, former MP for the Bay of Quinte, Neil Ellis.
Good evening, Paul and Colin. Nice to see you tonight.
Has anything been happening? No, I'm just kidding. So
No, not at all.
A lot of stuff. So it's been a busy time for you, but before we get into what's been happening for the past few weeks, of course, let's go back to that day in September when the election happened. So what was that day like for you?
Not like any other election.
This would be 6 for you, right? Because there were 3 as mayor.
3 as mayor and 2.
This was the third
Oh, third,
as
6,
MP.
yeah. You got one more on me, so you did your homework tonight. No different in any election. I mean, you always go in and think it, positive and that you're in running first. I knew it was going to be a close race, and it wasn't as close as I thought it was. But overall, people have spoken, but overall, it's been a five or almost 6 great years of serving the people in the Bay of Quinte, and thank everybody that voted for me and have supported me over my time in politics, not only as MP, but as mayor.
What advice would you give, let's say, if Paul decides to run for a municipal election, or you decide to run for mayor again? What advice would you give potential councillors?
You got to get your name out, and I mean, it's community involvement. And the first time I ran for mayor, I lost by, I think, 234 votes, something like that.
It was very close.
Yeah, I actually won on election day and lost in the advance polls. So we didn't peak at the right time. But it's one of those things, politics is great, and if you can get involved as much as you can.
So would you advise, let's say, Paul, if he decides to run, would you advise him to start earlier? You have to wait till May 1st to make it official, but can you jump into it unofficially?
I would say, you got to be out in your community, and Paul is, and he's done a good job with that. And I go back and I kind of lost track of the last question. When I lost the first time, people said that, I had my store and I was involved with corporate social responsibility and giving to the community, but I wasn't really out there on boards and worked like that. So I went back and got board experience.
So getting community involvement.
Community involvement and more outside.
So are you going to run for mayor coming up?
Wow, that's early.
That's early.
I'm he's here. I just thought I'd ask.
I don't know if Sue's watching tonight at home, so if I give an answer,
it's just between us.
Yeah.
Just nobody. Yeah.
If I had $1, and again for everybody that's asked me that in the last 2 weeks, and I do appreciate it. I could retire on that, and I do appreciate the support that's out there. I'm just getting over my past, as I said earlier, we just packed the Ottawa office up yesterday, and getting over packing up the Belleville office last week, and I'm heading to Ottawa tonight after the show to pack up my residence. And I always love the mayor's job, so it'll be something that.
So I'm not hearing a no.
And you're not really hearing a yes either, so yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You still have time.
And I asked Paul, if you're going to run for council, I'll put you on the spot.
And for me, it's the same thing. I always, in the same way you just said, encourage everyone to run. The more candidates, the more selection, the more community involvement, the more people will talk about it. That's under consideration, but that's a decision that I'm sure, as you would say, would have to be made in consultation with your family and depends on also the circumstances of the time.
Yeah. That was a better answer than I give.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I learned. I learned after watching others.
That was one of the first times I've been asked this to the press. But absolutely not federal or provincial politics. So partisan politics is.
So you've left the door open for municipal politics.
Well, the door is always open for anything that I can. There's lots of doors open, I guess.
Talk about what it means to be an MP in terms of representing the riding, because that will be the same for him and for Shelby that it was for you.
A lot of casework, and I know this year, prior to the election, we had over 15,000 emails that have to be answered. Well, they should be answered, I guess, but I had great staff. And casework we've become basically a Service Canada, a lot of the offices, and we're dealing with Revenue Canada, and we're dealing with veterans and things like that, and government moves slow to try to get answers and decisions for people. Sometimes is.
So when you say casework, you mean individual cases?
Individual cases, yeah. And the problem is we would have had 150 cases open that my staff were doing work on. They're all destroyed, so there's no handoff column. If you had a case with us, it's all shredded, it's done.
So if they've gone half, they got to start again?
Yep, you have to go in, you have to sign a thing with the new MP, and this is all every riding, so you'd have to go in and see Ryan's staff, sign a thing that you give them authorization to start, and they've got to start the case over from scratch.
Wow, so if I had a case and I was dealing with you, I would now have to deal with Ryan?
Yep.
or his staff.
You'd have to deal with his staff, but you would have to explain the story over again, and they'd have to start from scratch. Which, if staff were kept on, or with the government, then it would be a seamless transition. But
do you think that's because of partisan politics?
it is, I think. Now, my staff were nonpartisan. I believe in serving all the people. I think that you can get around that. I know one of my staff was a staunch, I think, conservative, but she worked out well and served the community well. So,
what happens now in terms of Ryan's absorbing this information? So there's a lot.
Yeah.
Talk about the learning curve. The first time you were elected, you'd already spent 8 years in municipal politics. How much is there to learn right off the bat?
Learn who the whip is, I guess. That's and if everybody doesn't know who the whip is, it's the one that gets us back into shape. But no, I don't think he'll have a problem. There's procedure-wise, and I put a tweet out. I give him my procedure book, so he's got that a month ahead of time to read. And it's Robertson rules and parliamentary procedure and committee work, and it's a lot of reading in that, so I don't see a problem. I don't see a problem for him.
Do you have any advice? I'm sure you gave him advice when you talked to him.
Yeah.
Not that he needs it, of course. But is there any advice you would give to him in this format, or can you share the conversation you had?
No, not really. Ryan, I've known him. I was at his wedding actually, and you know that, but. Not really. It's just been a friendly chat, and I want him to rent my office just because it's a nice spot. And he came in, and he looked at the office, and he took that over, and all our equipment is going to him. And no, things have been good.
So the transition for him will be a little easier than maybe for Sheldon?
I think. Well, we had to rent an office. We had to go out and buy all equipment and all that. So it took us a month over that. But I believe in. When I was mayor and I transitioned, and one of the staffers said to me I was the only mayor she would remember that actually helped the mayor coming in. I thought it was time to transition and give them the files and go from there. And she said that hadn't happened before, but I just thought that was standard procedure, I guess. But I was never into politics before I became mayor, so I didn't really know what sometimes standard procedure is, right? So.
Without further ado, I will turn it over to Colin for our newly rebranded version of Colin's Corner.
Well, thanks, Paul. So Neil, do you have a particular athlete that you...
Probably Mitch Marner, I would think.
He's a hockey player for those that don't watch hockey.
Or Matthews, one or the other.
So a Leaf fan.
Yeah, they're both entertaining, and the Leafs are usually entertaining. They've choked, I guess, but it's good hockey. It's entertaining.
This will be their year, maybe.
I don't know if they'll ever have a year, but I do enjoy.
Well, they do have a highly skilled team.
Yeah, they do.
Just need to get some good goaltending in the playoffs.
So.
All right, my second question for you, Neil, is do you have a particular favorite person that portrays James Bond since the new film is out? Like, you like Sean Connery or Roger Moore?
Probably, Sean or Roger Moore, one or the other.
Or Daniel Craig, the guy that's doing it now?
I watched it more when I was a kid growing up, so, some of the older Bonds. Haven't seen the new one. I guess it's at theaters now, and I looked, but I don't think it's in Belleville. Last week I looked to see if it was out. I don't know, Colin, is the screen's open there?
I think it's around. I think it's here. I think No Time to Die is that
No Time to Die.
Yeah. Okay. All right, my last question for you, Neil, is if you could pick a country to travel, not in Canada, a different country, and let's say it's COVID-free, just to make it a little easier, would you pick a particular country or continent to go visit?
Probably Australia. I haven't been there. I know my dad, when he served in World War II, his ship ended up landing in Australia, and he always talked about it. He didn't go. I think maybe he did make one trip with my mother there, but never been there, and traveled a lot, not only in the role as mayor and this and in my personal life, but
well, I can tell you my sister lived there for a couple of years and she loved it there.
I'd like to get the accent. That's the only reason I want to go, right?
Yeah. And all the wallabies and everything, but anyways, that's another story.
We'll have to wrap up there. Thank you so much, Neil.
That was a quick hour.
Yes, and thank you for all you've done for the city as mayor and as MP. This has been Beyond the Politics with our special guest this week, Neil Ellis.